This is Zachlog the Great, and I am joined tonight by my friend Nate.
In my prestige robe.
And we are also joined for the first time by a new guest, Uriel. Say hello.
Hello.
And we are getting together tonight to talk about J.R.R. Tolkien's poem, Song of Durin. And Uriel has volunteered to read that for us. But before we get to that quick, I just want to mention if you like my work, if you would like to support what I'm doing, you can go to subscribestar.com/Zachlog-the-great, and the link will be in the show description. You can sign up to support me, support this there between $1 and $5 a month. And I would be very appreciative if you did. But having said that, I'm gonna get the poem up on the screen for everybody, and Uriel, as I said, Uriel has volunteered to read that for us tonight. So, share screen, because there we go. Okay, let me know when you guys can see that.
Ooh. There it is.
Yep. The world was young, the mountains green, no stain yet on the moon was seen. No words were laid on stream or stone when Durin woke and walked alone. He named the nameless hills and dells. He drank from yet untasted wells. He stooped and looked in mirror, and saw a crown of stars appear, as gems upon a silver thread above the shadow of his head. The world was fair, the mountains tall, in elder days before the fall of mighty kings in Nargothrond and Gondolin, who now beyond the western seas have passed away. The world was fair in Durin's day. A king he was on carven throne in many pillared halls of stone, with golden roof and silver floor, and runes of power upon the door. The light of sun and star and moon, in shining lamps of crystal hewn, undimmed by cloud or shade of night, they shone forever fair and bright. Their hammer on the anvil smote, their chisel clove, engraver wrote. Their forged was blade, and bound was hilt. The delver mined, the mason built. Their beryl, pearl, and opal pale, and metal wrought like fish's mail. Buckler and corslet, axe and sword, and shining spears were laid in hoard. Unwearied then were Durin's folk. Beneath the mountains music woke. The harpers harped, the minstrels sang, and at the gates the trumpets rang. The world is gray, the mountains old, the forge's fire is ashen cold. No harp is strung, no hammer falls, the darkness dwells in Durin's halls. A shadow lies upon his tomb, in Moria, in Khazad-dûm. But still the sunken stars appear and darken windless mirror. There lies his crown in water deep, till Durin wakes again from sleep.
Okay, and all right. So, Nate, would you like to start us off tonight?
Tolkien makes me sad.
But there's also hope.
I love his stories. I really, really do. And when I was younger, I'd read them and be like, oh, yeah, things are awesome. Everybody's, fighting evil and doing all this. But as I've gotten older, I've learned to see the loss and what goes out of the world every time that they have to do that. And how the world degenerates and degrades the more and more and more time goes by. And I don't know. It makes me look around the real world and just, oh.
Yeah, there's
The problem is cowards often survive.
Yeah, there's I was gonna say there's a couple of different things ways you can look at this poem. One of which is like, the poem kind of in itself, like isolated from the rest, and then the other is like in connection to all the stories. And even just in itself, like there's a lot here. Just this sense of the world used to be, you know, like things were better in the past. Things are falling apart, sometimes right in front of our eyes. And, wow, things were, think about when things were amazing. And yeah, which is also, now that I think about it, it's kind of funny. I didn't intend this, but when I was initially talking to Uriel about joining us, I said he asked about like this person or this person, and the other poem I had suggested kind of has some of the same ideas. Like we're kind of falling apart here, uh, and so
Yeah, and I mean, yeah, it does give hope, that one day there'll be a restoration. Boy, oh boy. But I
I
mean,
would
you look at it, and yeah, the world is older and sadder and dimmer. And so the hope is wonderful and something we got to cling to. But at the same time, boy, it's hard to look outside sometimes.
Well, I would argue here that the real heart of the story is that there is hope, and this ties back to Tolkien's central theme, right? Aragorn, right? What was he named when he was young? He was named Estel, right? Hope, right? I give hope to men, I leave none for myself, right? But Estel, hope, that's the real central theme there. And I would tie that, because he thought very linguistically. I would tie that Estel to Elda, the stars, and Elbereth, the enkindler, right? Who Varda Elbereth, who hung the stars in the sky, right? And you see that hope, that Estel, in Durin's crown, seen in Miramir. Yes, he paints this wonderful, this terrible, in the best possible sense, but wonderful picture of with these images of the mountain, the halls that are gone cold and dark, and the life is gone from them. But at the same time, the stars are still there. Gil Estel, the Star of Hope, is still there. And Durin's crown will one day be worn by Durin again. Even if many things are lost, that doesn't mean that some things can't be restored, even if not as well.
well, and that's also expressed almost in very similar terms. That's also expressed at a different point in the Lord of the Rings. If I have it right, like while they're traveling through Morgoth, I mean not Morgoth, blah. You don't travel anyway. Traveling through Mordor, which by the way they did simply walk in. Okay, sorry Boromir, they did simply walk into Mordor. Anyway, but while they're traveling through there, like everything around them is ruined and blasted and destroyed and poisoned, and they're the only people they see are these twisted creatures of hate. And I kind of sympathize with them sometimes. But
Walk into Mordor or
but
San Francisco?
What's the difference?
The
but
orcs probably didn't
anyway,
poop on the sidewalk.
but while they are traveling through there, at one point some of the clouds part for a minute, and Sam looks up and he sees the stars, and he's like, you know what, Frodo, things look really bad here, and it's quite likely we're gonna fail, we're gonna die, and all of this is gonna be ruined. But there's beauty and there's wonderful things out there that this is never going to touch. And finding, keeping things like that in mind and finding hope in bleak times is pretty important. And this is something I actually said posted a while back on Social Galactic and possibly on Gab, but I said reminder, if you are a Christian, we are commanded to hope. It is not an option. It is not a suggestion. That is an order. And hope in what? I mean, you don't necessarily place hope in this person or that institution, but we are commanded to hope, and that's pretty important.
People talk about blind faith, but really, Christian hope is blind because we genuinely don't know what the good is. That's in the future. We hardly know what the good is in the now sometimes, but we do know that God is whatever evil is going about right now, God will bring good out of it. What that good is what's uncertain. But it is a blind hope and a fool's hope, but that's the kind of hope that we're commanded to have.
Well, and it's also I think this was in Heretics by Chesterton, which I listened to not long ago, but
Excellent.
He said hope hope is only a virtue when it makes no sense. Like, having hope when things look okay, that isn't really that much that any kind of virtue. That isn't really pushing yourself. It's having hope when it doesn't make any sense is when hope as a virtue matters. And it's part of it is like if you don't have meaning, if you don't have hope, if you don't believe something better is coming eventually, like well, I mean, it's like look at not Christian cultures, or and you could definitely say ours is not any longer at large, but like cultures with less influence of Christianity. Look at Japan. You know, haven't read a lot of it, but I'm told that a significant portion of their novels, a significant portion of their stories end with the main character killing himself, and that's just kind of the way the stories are supposed to go, and like. Here, like, you will have those stories, but it's kind of weird, and it sticks out. And so, yeah.
Can I go on a tangent really quickly here?
No, never. We never do that.
Yeah, our catchphrase isn't. Yeah, to get back to the poem.
If you consume any amount of Japanese whatever, and I'm not a huge fan, but I am a fan of some of it, you will notice they are very aware, and this is a very Buddhist way of thinking, but it's very true, that nothing in the world is permanent. Everything goes away. And that means that everything ultimately has to end up as a tragedy, and happiness can only be found in the moment. But this conflicts completely with the Christian insight, and I believe it. I mean, even if I wasn't a Christian, I would believe it was a genuine insight that there has to be a happy ending. God bless you. There has to be a happy ending, or nothing is happy, right? Now, that happy ending ultimately can't be in this world, but you have to point to that happy ending. You have to point to that hope in order to make a story really resonate, really be meaningful. And that's my opinion, at least. I don't know about anyone else.
It actually reminds me a little bit of a book we talked about. We did a discussion of not long ago, which is this right here. Nate was in on that one. Uriel, I don't know if you've heard of this one. I highly recommend it.
I'll write that down on my post-its after we get off of here.
There is no anti-memetics division. It's connected to the SCP stories, if that rings a bell.
Yes.
But apparently this was written in kind of two parts, and the first part ends basically the good guys lose and the world ends. And it's about I didn't know that was like actually for a while where the story just stopped. But then the second part, the author, for whatever reason, was unsatisfied with this and came back and took someone who managed to survive the apocalypse and struggles through basically hell for a couple of months and manages to get the world back on track. And it's kind of one thing that's kind of interesting. I believe I could be wrong, but I have the impression that the author is an atheist. But it's kind of funny because it's the way the story ends is actually beautiful. I mean, heart-wrenching kind of stuff. And but the funny thing is, to get to that, the author has to, like, even without if he didn't understand it, basically he makes it a religious story.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of funny to see, like, him doing things that if you asked him about it, he would probably be like, well, no, I didn't mean that at all. But it's like, no, this is very clearly here. And it's and it is also, like we were saying a minute ago, the this idea of hope when everything has come apart, when nothing makes sense. And so, yeah. Nate, are you there?
I'm here.
Okay, sorry. Your picture was very still for a while, and so I worried you'd cut out somehow.
No, I just don't. I don't have much of a need to fidget.
Okay.
Unlike me.
When I'm just sitting listening, I've got to be very, very still.
What's the now I'm thinking of Drax from Guardians of the Galaxy. But
I never saw that, but I still know the meme.
Our motions are so slow, they become imperceptible.
But anyway, so to use our catchphrase, well, one other thing this reminded me of quickly, one more tangent on a tangent. I haven't seen this one. I have seen it at World's End, Pirates of the Caribbean at World's End. But there's a conversation between Jack Sparrow and Barbossa, and Barbossa says, "The world used to be a bigger place." And Jack replies, "The world's still the same. There's just less in it." And yeah, I kind of feel like that's part of this. That's the same emotion as this poem has. A lot of it.
Yeah. There's a guy. I don't remember his name. Whatever. Didn't play the game, but the guy who did Elden Ring and I think the Souls games.
Miyazaki, yeah.
Yeah. He was talking about like I was like, man, why are all your bosses so sort of like, grotesque and like tortured? And he's like, well, he's like, all of his worlds are like decaying and you know, to me anyway, kind of frankly off-putting because I'm like, man, grotesque is the word. Like I was seeing a friend of mine play, and I was just like, there is nothing here that isn't like unsettling in some way. There's like nothing that's actually just beautiful.
Thank you. Yes, I
And
was
when he was
actually
talking
thinking
about,
exactly that thing. Yeah.
and he was saying, the guy that Miyazaki was saying that, he wants to bring the player and show them the pain of a once regal beast that is, trapped in an endless cycle of decay, and possibly forever. It's possibly an inescapable one. And so that's why they all have that sort of like misshapen, lurching, almost painful look to them. And
This
so,
this is your brain on Buddhism. That's
but I'm just like it sort of reminds me of that, but not quite. Like so that's kind of what I see today. A bunch of strange, misshapen, decaying creatures, ruined by their own hubris. And that's sort of our modern, that's a lot of our modern folk. But with with old Durin here, no, it literally is just these things have gone from the world, and we hope we'll get them back one day. But we could really use them right now.
well,
And
there's a lot
I think we could use more cowboys right now. I think we could use, more Knights Templar right now. I think there's a lot of things we could use right now we don't have anymore. I don't know. Maybe we'll be able to rebuild them and bring that kind of thing back. Bring back chivalry and honor, and just clear-sighted right doing, without having to try and figure out some edgy, ridiculous reason why you can, why you should sneer at the virtuous, and instead just bring back virtue.
Well, there are two things with that. To answer first, the first thing, Tolkien is brilliant about this because he's non-transactional. He knows that what is lost forever, and there's no way you can bring it back. You can build something else, but you can't bring back the same thing. Galadriel could build Lothlorien, but she couldn't bring back Doriath. Elendil could build Arnor, but he couldn't bring back Numenor. What is lost and deserves to be mourned and remembered, but that doesn't mean great things can't still be built on those foundations. And the second thing is what you were saying about shambling heaps of people or whatever. People can't even recognize hope nowadays, a lot of them, because people reject suffering and death, and because they reject suffering and death, they reject virtue. They cannot understand that sometimes death is the good ending, and ultimately death has to be, for us, the good ending in this world, not the ultimate ending, but the good ending in this world. And sometimes, even as we see in this world, maybe at this point the end of the world is the good ending. We don't know for sure yet. But if we are living through days of Tolkien, we are living through the Akalabeth. And
I don't know what
the
that is.
Akalabeth. The Downfall of Numenor. Downfall of Numenor. Okay. If you really want to do a passage that, Zach, like, you should just take that little snippet that describes Numenor falling down into the crack in the sea and say,
Oh, right. His Atlantis.
Yes, his Atlantis. But he talks about how Numenor and all its great houses and all its great men and wealth, and it just falls down into the sea. It is when you read that little portion of the Akalabeth about Numenor right before Arthur sails off to the Undying Lands, and then to when the Numenor is actually judged. And you look at our day, you're like, are you sure this guy was not foreseeing something? No, he was just that smart, but
there are
divine foresight, which is prophecy, and then there's the foresight provided by wisdom, which is I can do the math on this.
Yeah. Well, who's to say he didn't have both?
It's like I can lift my phone, stick it up in the air, and know the dust blows that way.
There's actually several poems I've done on this channel where I'm like, how did he know? Because like there's Rudyard Kipling, the City of Brass. Nate, did you do that one with me?
Yeah.
And he's like, and they and because there was need of more pay for the shouters and marchers, they disbanded in face of their foemen, their yeomen and archers. And I'm like, that is exactly the past few years. It's like, hey, we got to give all this money to like these BLM organizations and defund the police. It is literally exactly that. And then there's what is it? There's one by C.S. Lewis where he give me a second. Where like part of it is devils are unmaking language, and it's like
that hideous strength.
Well, no, but there's a poem where that is like literally the one of the lines. Readjustment. And one of the lines is devils are unmaking language, and I'm like, oh, bro, bud, they've just started. You haven't seen, you haven't seen it. But it's yeah, like there's numerous things I've from these where like these people can like see how these things are coming together that haven't fully embodied yet, or at least not in our time. And if I had to guess, I would say a significant part of that is they have a very firm grounding in history, and they're like, these are patterns. If this thing happens, this thing is going to happen not long after. And
then there's a choice to be made. Do you vote more cake into oblivion, or do you, tighten either your cartridge belt or your, your waistline? What are we doing?
Yeah.
But as is the phrase on these discussions, to get back to the poem. One thing, no, and Uriel, this is exactly how these go. Okay, this is not a problem for you. But one thing that fascinated me here is like, here, let me get this. Their hammer on the anvil smote, their chisel clothe and graver wrote, their forge was blade and bound was hilt, the delver mine the mason built. And like what he's mourning, what he's like, these were the great days, was we were creating, we were making, we were building, we were making beautiful things, and so much of that has stopped. And which actually, now that I think about it, I should have done more of this ahead of time, but just today I listened to a couple of videos like going over the origins and history of Tolkien's dwarves. I have read the Silmarillion, and I have it right there. I have read it. It has been a long, long time. I don't know how old you are, Uriel. It may possibly have been longer than you've been around.
No. I'm in my 30s. I'm in my 30s, so okay. Not likely.
Okay. I'm older than I look, but not that much older. Okay. But yeah, I read that in high school, and so like, it's been a good while, but the one thing about this poem and like Tolkien's story of the dwarves, um, the dwarves were not created directly by Eru, by Big G God, in Tolkien's story. Basically, one of the Valar, one of the higher order angels,
Okay.
um, got impatient. He's like, I want to see these other creatures that we talked about that were part of the plan. I want to see them running around. I want to see what they do. Um, and so he decided to go and make some himself. Um, and then there's a lot of other story around that, but it's kind of interesting, and that's part of this poem because Ale, who is their creator, is his field, his domain was crafting, building, smithing, kind of things. If you want to parallel Greco-Roman, he was Hephaestus, he was Vulcan, in that, and so that is part of who the dwarves are, and part of their identity. And so in this song of their great past, they're like, we made things and we're not doing it anymore. And it's kind of interesting to see how these different parts of the story work together.
Just what you reminded me back when the very first time he introduced the dwarves in the Hobbit. I think it was within the first couple paragraphs even, the dwarves were complaining about how they only had iron to work with, and this shoddy iron at that in the petty mines they were in, and they couldn't make any really beautiful things because they didn't have all the right stuff, and that was really why they wanted their wealth back. They wanted the gold back so they could make cool stuff with it, and that was their big complaint.
And to go back to parallel to our own day, I actually just a couple of days ago heard on his on one of his live streams, Vox Day was talking about he's building a he has a bindery, a book bindery, which is still getting spun up to print like long-lasting leather books, like in terms of you buy these and your great-grandchildren are going to have these and be able to read them someday, which is a kind of cool project, and I wish I had money to spend on those. But anyway, one thing he said about this, he's talking about like getting some of the machines to get this done, and he said, so he was looking at some of these, is like, oh, there's these remanufactured ones. Maybe that would be cheaper. We can get something that does the job, but less expensive. And he was talking to like people who in the industry, and they're like, oh no, that's not quite what you think it is. You see, the thing is, because the way these machines are built, they need to have this solid, heavy iron footing. And so what these people will do, they will buy these older machines, and they'll basically strip off everything else and use that from these older machines, because we can't get the good ones made anymore, because we don't have the kind of steel of the same quality that you need to get this job done. And he's like, guys, you see those cyberpunk stories where people are scavenging off of a society falling apart. We are living that right now.
I have such a hard time believing that. We have all kinds of awesome steals that you can do. You can get the micro editions to do just about whatever you need it to do within reasonable limits. I have now we may not have anybody mass producing it, but I have such a difficult time believing that we can't make metal good enough.
There is a difference between getting a little, tool made, or even a big tool made, and getting a big, huge base for a machine that may be larger than a single room made.
Yeah, that would be difficult. But
may I say, this is the least cool cyberpunk dystopia I have ever heard of. So, but the internet is awesome. I will give the internet that. The internet is great.
The internet.
And the other thing is, like,
not good or bad. It's just how you're going to use it.
Well, it is simply good. It is good because it exists, but it is a tool, and therefore it can be put to good or bad ends. But yes, I agree with you. Yeah.
Well, and the other thing is, like, if you theoretically can get something made, but getting it made, like getting for instance, this kind of steel of this quality produced, but like having that done as a custom job in the quantities you need is like so expensive.
Yeah. Now that I would absolutely agree with. It's not that it can't be done, it's that it can't be done economically. It would be a one-off custom piece and it would be prohibitively expensive. That I fully can understand. I'm like, yeah, that's probably absolutely the case. But the idea that we can't,
But at the same time, there is apparently a lost capacity because this was something that they used to have as a regular material, but we don't.
There's a lot of things we don't use a whole lot anymore.
I'm actually going to say something mildly heretical for somebody as far right as I am. I honestly don't think the primary culprit behind the loss of everything is diversity, although that's definitely a contributing factor.
Oh, no.
The primary reason for the loss of our capacity to do things is a combination of capitalism and bureaucracy, or capitalization, rather, although capitalism will definitely play into it. The bureaucratic corporation, the bureaucratic state via things, and then everything gets steered by committee, and things get lost in literally 11 levels of management. Ask me how I know this, but please don't, because I'll probably lose my job. And the fact is, do you know how much documentation gets destroyed by all these companies all the time, and how many systems just get lost, and how much data can't be read anymore? I'm sure you guys have some idea, but it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous, and all this stuff is being driven by people who are finance, people. And speaking as somebody who's in finance himself, finance people don't know garbage about anything but finance. And these people are making these uninformed decisions and looking only at what the bottom line for the next quarter is, or what they can claim it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a. Oh yes, we can have a paper.
No, go ahead, Sean.
Go. I was gonna say we can have a on paper profit of X for the next 3 quarters, and by the way, be sure to get out before the 4th quarter comes.
I work for a big company, a really big company. You would definitely know the name of this company. I worked prior to my current job at a position where I was working on one of the systems that was the bookkeeping system for the company. They closed the books for the month prior, a couple days after the quarterly shareholder report. They were cooking the books until after the shareholder report came out. I am not joking. And then they shipped it all over to India to make it cheaper.
Yep. See that?
This magical thinking, right?
Bureaucracy?
Magical thinking. If we claim something is and we shout it long enough and hard enough and hold our breath and stick our fingers in our ears, it will come true, right? That's how reality works. Words are buttons you push to make people do things.
Are you familiar, by the way, with Pornell's iron law bureaucracy?
Vox Day talks about it a lot. I couldn't quote it to you, but it's basically all bureaucratic systems exist to perpetuate themselves and not to accomplish the goal that they're purportedly set to accomplish.
Well, yeah, here it's well, I think Nate's been trying to say something for a little while, so I'm gonna.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, it's fine. No, I was going to say I think bureaucracy is probably the most evil thing humanity's ever created, or most destructive thing that humanity's ever created. Because you're right, anything that a committee gets a hold of will immediately start to suck. Like I say this about companies all the time. Companies tend to be vital and productive and strong and innovative as long as there's a dude at the helm. And I don't mean that just a man, but almost entirely men, yes. Eat that, feminists. Right along with that sandwich you're making me. But once it stops being one person is in charge of this. Like I think SpaceX was cool because Elon Musk is there going, we're gonna do this. My autism dictates that this is the way we're gonna handle things. And so there's somebody there to steer the ship and to go, I want to do this. This is what we're doing. Kings, for all their faults, having a king around means things move quickly. But once it, becomes the board of directors of a thing, all of a sudden, all of that ability to move is gone. And that's when they bloat, that's when they stagnate, and that's when they die. Because eventually there comes another company in the same space, sharp, fast, and with a dude at the front of it instead of a board trying to sit on top of it, and they cut their throat.
Mm-hmm.
And that's sort of how the life cycle is supposed to go. And so, yeah, bureaucracy ruins everything it touches because no one cares. It's not theirs.
No, and I've got a whole spiel about how medievalism is the model most in tune with human nature, and capitalism is evil and all that. But I'm not going to go on that route right now. What I want to say is that bureaucracy is a symptom of a larger issue in our society, and that is we've abstracted everything to death, and we are dealing in abstractions and not realities. And those abstractions are often lies, like the whole financial industry. That's a lie. The whole stock market is a lie. Right?
As someone who's more comfortable working with words than things, I feel a little uncomfortable here.
I'm the same way. I'm the same way. I am good at bureaucracy. I am good at all that other stuff. But that doesn't mean that the fact is that all of these things are at best, second order abstractions of reality. More often than not, they're just plain lies about what's really going on.
Well, and the other thing, actually, this reminds me, I actually have a video on this. This is why, I did this video a while back. Like, if you are intellectual, if you work with words, if you are stuck in your own head a lot of the time, you need to go to the gym. Okay, and you need to compete somehow with other people. Okay, even if it's just something for fun, because you go to the gym or you go, if you join in a race, okay, and you either win or you lose, and there are real physical limitations that you have to push up against and that push back on you, okay? Whereas like if you're stuck in your head all the time, like I have some kind of weird personality disorder or something. I find it amusing to argue on the internet.
Are you Irish?
Probably not the healthiest thing in the world, but not the worst. But the thing with that is, especially if it's like if you're not with a physically with a bunch of other people, you can always, in your own head, make it that you won. Okay? Whereas you play football or basketball, or you're in a race, you win or you lose, the ball gets to the end zone or doesn't, and you can't fiddle your way around it that much.
This is Platonism versus Aristotelianism part 100 billion. But our society is got a terminal case of Platonism, among other terminal cases. It's got like at least 10 terminal cases of whatever. But it's the abstraction is more important than the reality. That is the definition of Platonism. And sure, as the meme goes,
make the theory fit.
Well, as the meme goes, right? The cure for that is what's the meme? Touch grass, right? Go outside and look at the real world for a while. But we don't have to what is really there, and as long as we try to keep things bureaucratic and try to restore things that, quite frankly, shouldn't be restored, we're going to still be heading in the same cul-de-sac of modernism. But
I just realized that too. Oh, Nate, go.
No, it's something I had seen pointed out was that generally the closer a person's work is to the basics of life, like, the less they tend to get enraptured with bullshit. That's just the only way I can make it as blunt and perfectly said as it was.
It's true.
And the guy who just works in an office with abstractions all day, he could probably get taken in by some pretty deep crap.
Yeah.
The blue collar guy whose hands are dirty and who knows what his own sweat smells like, he's going to get taken in by less. And then the farmer ain't got time for that crap. He's got a field to plow. He's got life to cultivate and nature to be in. So y'all take that frou-frou nonsense somewhere else. The rain needs to fall.
Speaking as someone who is very bad with his hands and has done office work all his life, you're 100% correct. And in my opinion, my humble opinion, the best cure for that is to be willing to say, I don't know, which all too few people are actually willing to do. You don't say, I know this or I know that if you don't really know it. You say, I don't know. This is probable. This isn't probable. But sorry.
So there was something I had a little while ago. It took me a second to get back to it, but it occurred to me just a little bit ago that like the dwarvish version of touch grass would be the dwarvish version of go outside and touch grass would be like go into the mines and touch stone.
Probably.
Go cut stone, boy. So, okay. I'm going to take something that's thematically related, but sort of like just leapfrog into an entirely different fiction for a minute, because there's something that bothers me, and I just did it. Why are all dwarves Scottish? The Scots aren't the only miners. I was telling this to a kid at church the other day. I was like, let's talk about, we're playing a D&D campaign. I was like, that's cool. I had an idea for a D&D character. He's going to be a dwarf. But instead of being like, I'm a Scottish kind of dwarf, this dude's going to have like the thickest Tennessee accent. And his name's going to be Jedediah Fire Shovel. My people mine coal. Look, all them dwarves out yonder making mithril and all them special star steels and whatever ain't going to get nowhere without our fire shovel coal. We are the third most important dwarven clan in the entire people, right? We're down there under that bluegrass in the hills mining that coal. Everybody needs our coal to forge. So don't tell me I ain't dug no iron, I ain't a dwarf. I'll bust you upside the head with my fire shovel right here. What I was named for is what I carry.
That's great.
I just think that'd be a great trope.
Yeah.
Like West
I heard Texan dwarves because of the oil connection, but I hadn't heard that. That's wonderful.
Oh,
But yeah, just man, societies that are busy making things are societies that are busy flourishing. Or I guess it might relate the other way. But yeah, because
There's
again,
always spiritual thoughts.
people's hands are busy. And again, when you're busy with your hands, you don't have as much time to worry about the falsehoods. You have physical realities to put down.
Well, one of the few things I find encouraging about modern society is look at all these people. Not you too, Zach. Look at all these people who are creating things. I mean, have you guys heard of those folks who are trying to build and are like 90% through finishing after over a decade building the building Endor, the world of the Lord of the Rings inside Minecraft? Have you guys heard of that?
No, I haven't heard of that.
I have not heard of that one, but I have heard of some extensive projects. So
Right, but people are trying to create beautiful things, and a lot of people will create beautiful things just to create beautiful things, even regardless of their use. And
yeah, one thing for me, I'm not going to claim to be some great artist, but I do make things. Writing a book, for instance, trying to get it's finished, but I'm trying to get the last in final shape. But and I also make a lot of memes, probably too many. And the thing is, like, you find out, like, once you've done this for a while, you realize, like, you kind of have to. Like, if you're this kind of person, like, you have to do this or it bothers you. It just kind of, it's like, this little guy sitting on your shoulder, just like, poking you in the side of the head. You get this idea and you have to do something with it, or else, or else it'll just drive you nuts. And so, and yeah, it's, in some ways our society does provide, like, the creative people are still out there and are still building and creating. It's just, the genuinely good stuff is either smothered or destroyed these days. And pretty much almost anything that is actually promoted is at best nonsense, and pretty often, like, just absolutely toxic.
satanic.
And
Satanic is the
yeah,
word.
well, that's a rather more accurate way to put it. Yes. So,
What I will say about the way modern society is heading, one of the few positives I see, if we continue on all of these various, these trajectories, is that industrial society is collapsing. Like, it's starting to slow, not collapsing, it's loosening back up. Because for, like, industrial society, you need everybody close together, you need a rigid hierarchy, you need like a very large team. But people are starting, at least a little bit, I think, to realize that maybe we don't. Things have moved on. We don't all need to be in the factory with our floor managers and all of that. We're post-industrial. Used to be, we would make things because that was the economy. That's how we made a living. Now, as you say, people are making things for the pure joy of making things. And so, we're getting artisans back. And that's kind of great. But also, we're able to run things and do our business with much leaner, smaller teams. Much more, sort of diverged from these mega structures that we built in the back in the 20th century. And so I'm hoping, and actually I think COVID, one of the few blessings to come out of that, actually helped to accelerate this, because it taught people that, the office culture doesn't have to be a thing. We can change up how we do things. We can be more home. And so, we can just spend time with our family and friends instead of having to go talk to Karen down in accounting.
Or
so
HR.
God forbid. Look,
What was
I'm
sorry, I'm just remembering the meme of
I was in the Air Force. One of my jobs was to sort of deal with HR type stuff, and all I knew about it was I don't want to do it. I'm like, look, like I have to serve you your disciplinary papers sometimes. I'll just be like, leave me alone. Don't come to my office for this. Do you need to go on leave? I love to see people going on leave. That's right. Go home and be happy for a while. Take a vacation. I'll do whatever I got to do to help you, as long as I'm not going to jail for it. Do you need help with this? Okay, cool. Need help? Great. Don't come talk to me about drama. Like, I don't have any need of that. Luckily, it didn't happen much, but God, the times it did, I was just like, this is the most godforsaken crap.
Wait, so did I cast someone from your role in my story?
No.
What was Carrie? No, okay. I was thinking of Carrie.
I had a lot of other stuff on my
Okay.
plate, and that was sort of one thing. But like I said, I didn't have to do it much, and my whole day wasn't trying to hunt down people. My job had no dependence on hunting down people and making trouble, so I didn't have to hunt down people and make trouble. My job was more about, hey, keep the processes moving. That was sort of my day job. But yeah, one of the sort of extra duties that I had was doing that, and I was like, please don't make me do this.
So one of the things I'm hoping that we do retain the infrastructure for after things continue their collapse is that we continue to have the infrastructure for the internet and the computing architecture we have now. Because despite all of the bad things, and I'm not just talking about the obvious things like the surveillance, but also like the access to pornography, the other things.
I think most obvious.
The internet is one of the greatest tools, and the individual personal computer is one of the greatest tools for subsidiarity that we've ever seen in this world. And it's also one of and this is one of the very few things that our particular artificial nation has done well. Subsidiarity from the beginning. Power always devolving to the smallest competent authority, which in most cases is the head of the family. And I think this could be a saving grace if things are resolved in an earthly rather than a heavenly manner going forward.
Okay, so let's wait. What time?
We are almost exactly at an hour.
Yeah, I was checking the time here. So let me see. Let me check if, as I said, we are all over the place with these. It's if you have the time, to my audience, if you have the time and you haven't read it, I would recommend at least once reading Tolkien's Silmarillion. It is pretty dense, but the way he builds like the entire world is pretty fascinating. And let's see. Nate, did you have any last thoughts on the poem for the evening?
I would also recommend reading the Silmarillion, reading these great works of creativity and positive genius that have been passed down to us by some people. And to understand that in this existence, great things have come and they have gone. But the point that Uriel made is true. We can't bring them back. There will never be another Tolkien. There'll never be another Frank Herbert. There'll never be another Louis L'Amour, another Shakespeare. But we can carry forward the spirit of those people, those things. And we can make this world wonderful. We can, like Narsa, we can fuse together the shards of the old to create new splendor for a future that we hope to build. And so, yeah, this poem makes me sad because it makes me think of loss and all the things that have been taken out or have just gone from the world. But in the end, Uriel's right. The crown of Durin will be worn by Durin again. This world can see new glory, but it's in our hands to build it. And so I encourage all of you,
And
whatever your gifts are, whatever your desires are, whatever God has put into your heart to do that. And bring light and wonder to this dim and gray place so that maybe one day our children can sit around and talk about whatever it was that we did.
how about you, Uriel? Any last thoughts on the poem tonight?
I am definitely going to plug the Silmarillion as well. The Silmarillion is absolutely brilliant. Now, I loved it from the moment I started reading it, which is not everybody's reaction to it, but I will say that the story of Beren and Luthien is the most beautiful thing he ever wrote, and he thought so too, and heartbreaking, as is generally common in his works. Also, I love Gondolin. Gondolin is awesome, but and the Akalabeth, which is usually packaged with the Silmarillion, is incredibly relevant for our times, and I'm not going to go further on that tangent because that is a tangent. If I could, one more Tolkien plug and a Tolkien adjacent plug. The key to interpreting Tolkien is Leaf by Nigel, which is one of his works. Leaf by Nigel is very short. It is 20 pages about, and it is his entire creative vision, how he saw himself and his work as an author, or as he is in this story, a painter. The last plug is I firmly believe the definitive edition of definitive recitation, you might say, of the Song of Durin is by the vocal group Clamavi de Profundis. And they are on YouTube, and you can find them here. And it is one of the first things they did, and it is still incredibly, incredibly beautiful. So,
okay. Well, thank you both for joining me tonight. To our audience,
thank you so much.
Thank you for listening, and God be with you.
Also with you.
That's